And we're back after the break. Stoveminders. It is the 24th of June, 2020, and there's no Major League Baseball. But not for long. Not for long. That will change somewhat soon. In a month, there will be baseball. But how did we get here? Well, I don't want to do a detailed rundown of the gong show that the last 3 to 4 months has been for baseball, for society. All you need to know is the disease of the year, COVID-19, has thrown a wrench into just about everybody's machines. And for baseball, that's meant cutting off spring training, putting the season on hiatus, going through what felt like weeks of protracted, tedious, cynical negotiations between the league and the owners on one side and the MLB Players Association on the other. A series of meetings and disagreements that, on one hand, was true to the professional character of this brand of baseball. Money is the bottom line for owners and for players. And the outcome was bittersweet, to say the least. It didn't end with a handshake. Didn't end with an agreement that both sides could say that they're behind. It ended with the commissioner imposing the season. And that's because the Players Association agreed back in March, when the season was suspended, that under certain parameters, Robert Manfred could unilaterally say, we're playing baseball games on this certain date. And with neither side coming to an agreement, a lot of splitting hairs, finally, Manfred said, screw it. We're going to start playing 23rd of July, Thursday. It's your opening day for 2020. And that's kicking off a 60-game season. Yeah, dramatically short. If you are at all tapped into Twitter, get off. It's bad. It's bad for everybody. It's bad for Trevor Bauer. I mean, I like what the guy's doing for the game, but just he needs like parental controls on his Twitter account. Even if you may find his childish arguments with Kurt Schilling and Aubrey Huff mildly entertaining, I think it's just kind of embarrassing for everybody in the end. As a matter of fact, this whole past month has been super embarrassing for the game of professional baseball. Just a terrible, terrible show for the MLB. Meanwhile, over in Japan and Korea, those leagues have gotten off and they're playing. But here we are at the end of June, and you might remember there was at some fabled time long ago, teams were supposed to start training in the middle of June with an early July opening day, perhaps the 4th of July. But no, that's not what happened. Commissioner Manfred has imposed this upcoming season, which will, I guess, technically begin on the 1st of July, when players are expected to report to their training facilities, after which they're going to get tested and all that stuff. And after about 3 weeks of training camp, summer training, I guess you can call it, opening day has been scheduled for July 23rd, a Thursday, a night in which there will be 2 primetime, nationally televised games. We don't know what games yet, and feel free to speculate. And then from the 24th to the 26th of July, that's a weekend, Friday to Sunday, all the other teams are going to play. So mark your calendars and begin the speculation, because this season will be very short. 60 games, in fact, just 60 games. It's a bit over a third of a regular season. Man, I mean, that's like 2+ months of baseball in a regular setting. Really, anything can happen. An enormous amount of intrigue, to be sure. And not only will the season be very short, but the nature of the game itself will be a little bit different this upcoming season. First and foremost, let's see what these 60 games will consist of. Well, 40 of those games, 2/3, teams will be playing against divisional opponents. And there's been some confusion with how the league is going to be structured. People saying there's going to be these like super divisions where the AL Central and the NL Central and so forth will all be one big division. But it seems to be that, technically speaking, the NL and AL will continue to be separate leagues for the purpose of standings and what those are going to look like, with 2/3 of each team's games being played within the division and the other 20 being played against intra-league opponents in the opposite division. So that's what that is all about. And for the sake of consistency, the universal designated hitter has been given the go for the 2020 season. Now, this is not a huge surprise, not just given the circumstances, but also because the league, its owners, the commissioner have been clamoring for this for what feels like years now. The universal DH is a source of a lot of debate in baseball circles. I'm not going to get into it. All I will say is that I'm actually glad that we're getting the universal DH in this cockamy, shortened season where there's not going to be any fans in the stands. You know what I mean? Like, give it a test run for 60 games. I'm glad they're doing that instead of going a full 162, whole new season with these new rules. And as it stands, the universal DH is only being applied to the 2020 season, meaning they may go back to it in 2021. And then after that, of course, the CBA expires and they'll probably go into a strike and yada yada. But we will get a live official game preview of what the universal DH will look like in the MLB. The other rule change, and this one I'm willing to debate a little bit, is a way that MLB is going to shorten games, particularly extra inning games, this upcoming season. Now, if you're familiar with the lower levels of the minors or the World Baseball Classic, you know about this. So, starting in the 10th inning, each batting team will begin with a runner on second base. That runner will be the last guy out from the previous inning. So let's say you struck out with the bases loaded to send the game to extras. Well, at least you get to start on second the very next time your team is up, and maybe you can run home to salvage your reputation. That starting runner on second will count as an error in the box score, an error that is not assigned to anybody, and so it will not be an earned run for the pitcher. This will mean no marathon games this upcoming year, which again makes sense considering the circumstances, the shortened season, and all that. But as for the long term, I'm not totally on board with this, and I think a lot of baseball fans aren't either. Those marathons, that's baseball. It's the fact that games can go on forever and ever. It's the timelessness, and the grind, the endurance, and the attrition really comes through in two ways, I would say. One of them is the 162 game season as a whole, and while personally I am an advocate of shortening the season to some degree, I think even in like the 120 game range would be fine. To just have a guy just start on second in extra innings, I don't know. And MLB trade rumors ran a poll asking their readers what they thought, and 81% were against having a runner start on second base in extra innings. And I voted no as well. But whether we like it or not, we will see it here in 2020. And we'll maybe have a better opinion of it. Again, I like how it's being test ran at the major league level in the same way the universal DH is. Some baseball people have thrown around the idea of having ties. If MLB doesn't want to have these, 4-hour, 15, 16-inning marathons, how about just having it end with a tie in like the 12th or something? I believe they do this over in Asia, and I think that's kind of a cool idea, but what's more ungratifying than a tie, really? Like, sometimes it makes sense, other times it doesn't, and when it doesn't, it's just like, not a huge fan of it in soccer. It always seems really stupid when it happens in football. I like that they went away with it in hockey. Personally, I would not want to see it in Major League Baseball. But for some other weird caveats for 2020, there will be a trade deadline on the 31st of August. So it'll be interesting to see if teams make any trades. Again, with a 60-game season, there's going to be a lot of urgency and just so much unpredictability. The things that can happen in a 60-game span, who's going to slump, who's going to get hot. It's going to be such a weird year, and there's going to be a lot of intrigue, and frankly, I kind of like that. Not saying every season should be like that, but let's take it for what it's worth. I think there are some positives to extract from MLB in 2020. As for the IL, there will be a regular 10-day injured list plus a special COVID IL with, an infinite time. So if you test positive, you can go on that. So you have other precautions being taken with this whole virus pandemic still going. Number one, no fans in the stands. At least to start. That might actually change. There's already been some talk about that because, the legality of that depends on each state and each municipality. So if the mayor or governor of a particular jurisdiction says, yeah, you can have, fans at 25% capacity or whatnot, I'm sure teams will do that just to get some ticket sales in there for a little bit of atmosphere. But for the meantime, it's going to be no fans, which it's going to be weird. Cole Hamels went out and said it's going to feel like the biggest tryout ever, which it'll be funny because the players are all going to hear each other. It's going to be some trash talk maybe. I don't know how mic'd up they're going to be. I know Bauer and such are big advocates of getting the players mic'd up during games. The league's a little lukewarm on that, but I think it would be a great opportunity for them. And usually they have mics up around the field anyway to capture the atmosphere of the ballpark. No such atmosphere this time, so hey, at least get the players screaming fuck as they strike out Jason Hayward, everybody. Roster rules for this season have not been finalized, so we're not sure how these rosters are going to look like. People are throwing around the term taxi squad, basically saying that I guess you're going to have like a 40-man roster running around with you. Big thing. There's not going to be any minor league baseball in 2020. So no call-ups, no rehab assignments, which could provide some great opportunities for young players, prospects, and guys who are always kind of on the fringe of the majors and AAA. Now, for players who are high risk as far as the virus goes, players who I guess have pre-existing conditions, are immunocompromised, or who have close family with those same issues, those players can opt out of the season with full pay and service time in consideration. That's pretty cool. I guess kudos to MLB for doing that. It'll be interesting to see who will exercise those opt-outs. Apparently, Bryce Harper qualifies through his partner, so that'd be a bombshell if Harper's just like, I'm not doing it, not playing this year. And this one is just so anti-baseball to me, but I understand why. No spitting, none. You can't spit. You can't chew tobacco. You can't chew seeds. You can chew gum. You're allowed to chew gum. They'll give them that. You can have your double bubbles, but there's no spitting and there's no high fives, which is going to be strange, but I'm sure we'll get used to it. And on that count, there's going to be a 6-foot buffer zone around every umpire. And if a player breaches that buffer zone of 6 feet to argue a call, for instance, they will be suspended. I really want some irate manager to break that just to make a point. I mean, it'll be stupid if they do, but it'll be a good story. So a lot of shouting matches from a distance, which could be entertaining in itself, especially with no crowd noise. Yeah, it's going to be some great echoes, some great acoustics. Also for pitchers, you're not allowed to lick your finger to get better traction on the ball. If you want to get it all moist, pitchers will be allowed to carry a small wet rag in their back pocket. So it's great news there. And also, MLB can force a team to relocate for the season if there is an outbreak. So looking at Arizona, looking at the teams in Florida, where there's currently been a spike in coronavirus cases from what I read. If things are getting crazy in Miami, Manfred can say, hey, Marlins, you guys got to move to friggin' Virginia now. So we'll see if that happens. And I guess a footnote on that is what's going to happen to the Blue Jays? Now, I live in Canada. I'm not a Blue Jays fan. I've never even been to Toronto, thank God. But basically, it's not clear if the Jays are going to be allowed to play out of the Rogers Centre, out of Toronto this upcoming season, because the Canadian government has a rule where if you enter the country from out of the country, you have to do a 14-day self-isolation thing. That's just not going to happen in this pro sports league. It's been something of an obstacle with the NHL reaching a final decision on where they're going to host games to finish up their season, which ended like right before the regular season was supposed to end, and it's going to affect the Jays in some sort of way. I remember earlier in this hiatus, they were throwing around the idea of having the Jays play out of Dunedin, Florida, where they have their spring training facilities. But if Florida continues to get fucked by the virus, the Jays may have to play, I don't know, Buffalo or something, which will be cool. It'll be cool, you know. And again, it doesn't matter for the fans. There's no one's allowed in. If you are a stove minder, if you're all about the hot stove and transactions and all that, they'll have something for you soon, hopefully, because on this Friday, the 26th of June, the player market will open up again. Teams can sign free agents, trades, all that stuff. Yasiel Puig, remember, is still a free agent, so we'll have to wrap up where Puig goes for this for 2020. And apparently the San Francisco Giants have been very interested in him. That would be an interesting move, considering the fact the Giants are not expected to be competitive next year. You know what? Hey, why not? Why not have Puig for a 60-game little run of it for a 1-year contract? Yeah, we'll see what happens there. And another interesting concept that's been thrown around is, okay, so the minor leagues are not happening this year. So Nashville, which has a AAA team, the Sounds, who are the Texas Rangers affiliate, Nashville Sounds have come out and said, hey, how about we have a free agents league? And the idea is they would host 40 players across 2 teams in Nashville who could play out of the Sounds ballpark. And they're already talking about being able to sell tickets because I guess apparently in Tennessee they're doing fine over there. That's an interesting idea. We'll see how that goes. It'll definitely give a lot of guys an extra shot, especially with no AAA or any other minor leagues play going down. And apparently other minors clubs are already considering the same thing. We haven't heard anything from the league on that count. But again, interesting idea. We'll see how it turns out. Even in terms of rules, I don't know, maybe they're feeling like a bunch of renegades and they want to let the pitchers hit. We'll see. We'll see about that. And the last bit of news, I guess, is a little bit of a preview of what could happen this season regarding the virus itself. So 3 players on the Colorado Rockies have already tested positive for the Cove. Talking about a couple of pitchers, Philip Deal and Ryan Castellani. And Charlie Blackmon is infected. Charlie Blackmon has the COVID. So, yeah. I actually don't know what's going to happen. I didn't read through the whole protocol that the league and the players I don't even think they've agreed to like a dead set protocol on what's going to happen if guys test positive and all that. But there's a lot of information like that going around. They've been toying with ideas, so, you know, in the negotiations. So we have an idea of what could happen. I encourage you to read into that if you're interested. I don't care. When it happens, it'll happen, and then we'll have, I guess, bust out the handbook on what to do when a guy gets sick. So yeah, that's the return of Stoveminders for you after about a 4-month hiatus. I think it was in the end of February or maybe early March the last time I did this. As I hinted to, a lot has changed, particularly going into March. My life was going in a very good direction, and then things kind of got a little fucked. But at the moment, I'm standing in the middle of a field on a beautiful summer evening / late afternoon in the middle of summer. The days are long. The weather's been interesting to say the least, and baseball is on the horizon, so I'm glad about that. And I guess we could do a little bit of a Cubscast. Why not? Why not? Because the one positive baseball thing that's happened in the past few months was the draft, which went down a couple weeks ago, June 10th to the 11th. It was only 5 rounds, but it was the only thing happening. So luckily for the draft, it was the highest profile I've seen that event have, perhaps ever. You probably know Spencer Torkelson went first overall to the Tigers. He's a big hitting corner infielder coming out of Arizona State. He's 20 years old. It'll be interesting to see if he and the rest of the Tigers can take this multi-year tank job and actually be competitive in like 2023 or whenever. But as for the Cubs, well, the Cubby Bears selected Ed Howard in the first round, 16th overall. Howard is a shortstop. He's from Chicago, or rather from the Chicago area, straight out of Linwood, south of the South Side, still in Cook County. He has phenomenal defense, and has just been lauded on that count as far as his offense. He makes good, consistent contact. He's got great bat speed. Definitely needs to work on his batting, and doesn't have a ton of power, but the room for improvement is there. And again, this guy's apparently already like a Gold Glover in the making. Future Andrelton Simmons, perhaps. Who knows? And the fact the Cubs got a guy like that who they wanted to get, a hometown kid, is just great. You can add the footnote. He's also an Afro-American, which is cool, and considering all the shit that's going on in America. But if that's the first thing you see and the first thing you talk about, like the Hallow Words poster, then you're missing the point. And in the second round, the Cubs took a left-handed pitcher named Burl Caraway. Burl, B-U-R-L, his first name. Burl Caraway from, I should mention Ed Howard is 18 years old. He's a high schooler. So is Caraway. He's from Dallas. And apparently he's already a reliever. Like, he's just straight to relief. Caraway is not a high schooler. I'm sorry. Dallas Baptist is a university. But already in college, and he's already a reliever. That's just how he pitches. He's a big effort, high velocity, but on a small frame. So he's the kind of guy you're going to plug him in for one inning to throw mid to high 90s and hopefully get as many guys out as possible. Not super excited on that. I mean, it's great to have a pitcher like that in your staff, but I don't know. I want a guy who'd be able to start, especially considering how suspect the Cubs organization has been when it comes to pitchers. So not very awe-inspiring, but good luck to Burl Caraway as well, and the other two pitchers that the Cubs drafted. I forget their names. And then the other guy, because again it was just a 5-round draft, was a Canadian, actually, or technically a Canadian. Jordan Nwogu. I believe his family's Nigerian, judging by his name. Was born in Ottawa. He's played college ball at Michigan for the Wolverines. He's an outfielder. Yeah, a little bit. Always love another Canadian down in Chicago. But yeah, and that's how the Cubs did in the draft. That's about it for Cubscast. And that's about it for the program as a whole. Thank you for listening. Please tear me apart in your comments and your replies. Accidentally hit subscribe. Thumb me up. 5 stars. Have a great day.